I destroyed my life by being the nice guy who said yes to everything, and it cost me my relationships, my time, and my dreams. But then I learned 3 game-changing principles, and everything changed overnight. Today, I'm showing you exactly how to set boundaries that make people respect you more, become strategically unavailable so your time becomes valuable, and move at the speed that separates achievers from dreamers. This is the complete system for taking control of your life. Most men think that setting boundaries will push a woman away, but it won't. It will actually draw the right woman closer. If you spend your days walking on eggshells, making yourself constantly available, and tolerating disrespectful behavior to avoid conflict, you're creating a dynamic where your value diminishes over time. You're teaching her and yourself that your needs don't matter, your time isn't valuable, and your self-respect is negotiable. But if you spend your days honoring your own principles, maintaining healthy limits, and responding to disrespect with calm confidence, you're establishing your value. You're creating an environment where mutual respect can flourish and where attraction actually deepens rather than dies. Because true connection isn't built on endless compromise. It's built on mutual respect. My friend, this isn't about being rigid or controlling. It's about having the courage to define and protect what matters to you, while still remaining open to her needs. I'm going to reveal the exact 3-step boundary framework that transformed my dating life in just a moment. But first, we need to understand why most men's approach to relationship problems actually sabotages attraction. When I finally began setting boundaries in my relationships, something unexpected happened. Instead of driving women away, it filtered out the ones who didn't truly value me and magnetically attracted those who did. The quality of my relationships transformed because the foundation shifted from fear to respect. Think about the men you respect. In business, in your personal life, wherever. Do they let people walk all over them? Do they abandon their values at the first sign of disapproval? Or do they stand firm in who they are, what they believe, and how they expect to be treated? The answer is obvious. Yet somehow, when it comes to dating, many men abandon this fundamental truth. And the biggest mistake men make in relationships? Believing that avoiding boundaries will prevent rejection. Waiting until she respects you before you require respect. Waiting until you feel secure before standing up for yourself. Waiting until the relationship feels stable enough before revealing your authentic needs. But here's what most men miss. The absence of boundaries doesn't prevent rejection. It guarantees a slower, more painful form of it. The truth is, continuing to operate without boundaries is actually the riskiest choice you can make. Because while you're trying to secure her affection through constant accommodation, you're actually eroding the very qualities that created attraction in the first place. Let me tell you, I've watched countless relationships follow this tragic trajectory. The man who cancels his plans with friends whenever she calls. The guy who never expresses his opinions when they differ from hers. The partner who accepts blatant disrespect because he's afraid of being alone. In every case, the pattern is identical. Her initial attraction faded as his self-respect diminished. What started as appreciation for his kindness eventually transformed into loss of respect for his lack of backbone. We teach people how to treat us. This isn't about blame, it's about recognizing a fundamental truth. No one can value you more than you value yourself. When you consistently prioritize keeping her over keeping your self-respect, you lose both in the end. Now, I'm curious about your experience with this. Have you ever set a boundary in a relationship and been surprised by the positive response? Or have you avoided boundaries and seen how it affected the dynamic? Your insights might help other men recognize these patterns in their own relationships. Setting boundaries without losing her isn't about ultimatums or power struggles. It's about clear communication from a place of self-worth. Here's the 3-part framework that transformed my relationships. First, identify your non-negotiables. These aren't arbitrary rules to control her. They're expressions of your core values and needs. This requires honest self-reflection about what truly matters to you versus what's simply preference or reaction. For example, a non-negotiable might be, I won't accept being spoken to disrespectfully even during arguments. Or, I maintain my regular Thursday night activity with friends. Or, I'm not comfortable in relationships where there's regular excessive drinking. The key distinction: boundaries protect you, not control her. They're about what you will do, not what you demand she does. Second, communicate boundaries with calm clarity, not emotional reactivity. Timing is crucial here. Boundaries are best established early and reinforced consistently, not introduced during heated moments. The formula I found most effective: when situation occurs, I feel emotion, so I need specific boundary. For example, when you cancel our plans last minute, I feel disrespected, so I need at least a few hours notice when plans change. I'm going to show you exactly how to handle the most challenging boundary scenarios in just a moment. But first, we need to understand the critical third element that most men completely miss. The third component, and where most men fail, is consistent enforcement without drama. A boundary without consequences isn't a boundary, it's a preference. This doesn't mean punishment or manipulation, but rather a clear understanding of what you'll do if your boundary isn't respected. For instance, if you continue to check my phone without permission, I'll need to take some space to reevaluate our trust dynamic. The power of this framework lies in its focus on your responses rather than controlling her choices. It gives her freedom while still protecting your self-respect. So what's it going to be? Will you continue abandoning your needs to avoid conflict? Keep tolerating behavior that diminishes you? Stay in the cycle of resentment and frustration that comes from swallowing your truth? Because if you don't start establishing healthy boundaries, nothing will change. The dynamic that's causing your frustration now will only intensify. The disrespect you're tolerating will become the baseline for how you're treated. The resentment you're suppressing will eventually poison any love that remains. And 6 months from now, you'll either be the man who found the courage to stand in his worth and created a relationship based on mutual respect, or the man who's still sacrificing his authenticity while watching her attraction fade day by day. Let me tell you, I faced this exact choice after years in relationships where I constantly compromised myself. The turning point came when I realized that my fear of losing her had already cost me something more important: my relationship with myself. This revelation didn't make setting boundaries easy, but it made it necessary. And what happened next shocked me. Some women did leave when I established boundaries, and in retrospect, that was a blessing. But others responded with increased respect and deeper attraction, precisely because I finally respected myself. This transformation is available to you right now. Not when you feel more confident, not when you find the perfect woman, today. If you're thinking, this makes sense in theory, but how do I actually implement boundaries without ruining my relationship? Start here. First, start with positive boundaries before addressing negative ones. Positive boundaries are about claiming time and space for yourself, while negative boundaries address specific behaviors you won't tolerate. For example, begin by establishing a weekly activity that's just for you, whether it's hitting the gym, meeting friends, or pursuing a hobby. Frame this as an enrichment to the relationship. Having this time for myself helps me show up better for us. This lays the groundwork for more challenging boundaries later by establishing the principle that your individual needs matter to the relationship's health. Second, use the 24-hour rule for reactive boundaries. When you feel your boundary being crossed in a way that triggers strong emotion, avoid setting the boundary in that heated moment. Instead, say something like, "I need some time to think about this. Can we talk tomorrow?" Then use that time to get clear on exactly what boundary needs to be established and how to communicate it effectively. This prevents boundaries from being perceived as emotional reactions or punishments. Think about the last time you wanted to set a boundary but didn't. How would applying the 24-hour rule have changed that situation? What would you say differently with this approach? Third, recognize that her testing of your boundaries isn't always a negative. Sometimes it's an unconscious way of verifying that you truly value yourself. The key is responding with consistent calm rather than either angry defensiveness or immediate surrender. When a boundary is tested, restate it simply, without extensive justification or emotional intensity. As I mentioned before, I'm not comfortable with boundary violation. I need specific request for this relationship to work for me. This calm consistency is what builds respect over time. Finally, understand that true boundaries include the willingness to walk away if they're consistently violated. This doesn't mean threatening to leave over minor issues, but rather developing the inner knowing that you won't remain in situations that compromise your fundamental values. Paradoxically, this willingness to walk away if necessary is often what makes a woman want to stay, not because she's afraid of losing you, but because she respects that you respect yourself. Because in the end, boundaries aren't about controlling her behavior. They're about taking responsibility for your own life and choices. Here's the counterintuitive truth that transformed my dating life. The very boundaries you fear will push her away are often what create deeper attraction. This creates what I call the boundary paradox. What many men avoid out of fear of losing connection is precisely what creates the conditions for genuine connection to flourish. Why does this paradox exist? Because despite what some men fear, quality women aren't looking for doormats. They're looking for partners who bring their full, authentic selves to the relationship. When you set healthy boundaries, you communicate powerful truths without saying a word. You value yourself. You're not desperate to keep her at any cost. You have the emotional strength to risk disapproval. You bring clarity and stability rather than confusion. These qualities are inherently attractive because they signal a man who understands his worth. The most profound shift happens when you truly internalize this. Boundaries aren't obstacles to intimacy. They're prerequisites for it. Without boundaries, you don't have genuine connection. You have two people losing themselves in unhealthy dynamics. I've seen this transformation repeatedly, both in my own relationships and in those of men I've mentored. The moment they stopped fearing boundaries would drive her away and started implementing them with respect and consistency, the entire relationship dynamic shifted toward greater mutual respect. Because contrary to what many men fear, the right woman doesn't want you to abandon yourself for her. She wants a partner who knows who he is and stands in that truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Now, setting boundaries in relationships is just the beginning. Because once you understand how to protect your value with one person, you need to learn how to protect your most precious resource with everyone else in your life. The same principles that create respect in relationships apply to how you manage your time, energy, and availability. And if you don't master this next level, even the strongest boundaries won't save you from burning out, while everyone else benefits from your constant accessibility. Most people think being constantly available makes them valuable, but it doesn't. It makes them common, disposable, replaceable. If your days are filled with constant interruptions, always saying yes, always being the person everyone can count on, regardless of the cost to yourself, you're building a life where you're seen as a resource, not as a person. You're training people to see your time as less valuable than theirs. You're showing the world that your priorities, dreams, and needs come last. And eventually that becomes your reality. Your availability becomes your identity. Your worth becomes tied to your utility to others. Your value becomes measured by how quickly you respond, how easily you accommodate, how willingly you sacrifice. But if you spend most days being intentional about your availability, saying no to what doesn't serve you, creating space for what matters, and being deliberately unavailable to distractions, you build something different. You build a life where your time has value, where people respect your boundaries because you respect them first, where what you accomplish matters more than how available you were while doing it. Your unavailability becomes a statement. My time has value. My energy has limits. My attention is precious. And when that message is clear, everything changes. Your relationships transform, your productivity multiplies, your self-respect solidifies, because you don't just stumble into a respected, purposeful life. You build it, one boundary at a time, one no at a time, one moment of choosing yourself at a time. And the biggest mistake you can make? Continuing to be available to everyone, waiting for permission to prioritize yourself. Waiting until you've helped everyone else before focusing on your goals, waiting until people stop needing you before you start setting boundaries, waiting until you're completely burned out before you realize something needs to change. I hear these excuses every day. I don't want to disappoint anyone. If I'm not available, they'll find someone else. I can't say no. What will people think? They depend on me. It's faster if I just do it myself. I'm afraid of missing out. It's selfish to put myself first. These thoughts kept me trapped for years. They sound responsible, virtuous even, but they're not. The truth is, playing it safe by remaining endlessly available is actually one of the biggest risks you can take in life. Because while you're busy being available to everyone else, your dreams, your health, and your true potential remain unavailable to you. I learned this lesson the hard way when my doctor told me my constant stress was causing heart palpitations. My body was literally breaking down from being perpetually on call for everyone else. Ask yourself, what's your constant availability costing you right now? What opportunities are passing you by while you're busy responding to other people's urgencies? What parts of yourself are you neglecting while you attend to everyone else? Most people don't realize they're sacrificing their most precious resource, time, until they have very little of it left. Every time you say yes to someone else's priorities, you're saying no to your own. Every time you allow an interruption, you're allowing the disruption of your focus, your progress, your peace. Every notification you respond to, every quick favor you agree to, every boundary you let someone cross, every time you answer work emails at 10 p.m. These aren't small decisions. They're life decisions. They're deciding how your limited time on this planet will be spent and who it will be spent serving. Let me share exactly how to reclaim this time, and I will do this in just a moment, but first I want you to understand what's really at stake here. Think about what you're losing through constant availability, the deep work that never gets done, the creative insights that never have space to emerge, the relationships that never grow deeper because you're spread too thin, the business you never start, the book you never write, the health you never prioritize. Did you know the average person checks their phone 96 times a day? That's once every 10 minutes of waking life. By the time you're 60, you'll have spent nearly 9 years of your life just looking at your phone. 9 years of being available to whatever pops up on that screen. And unlike money or connections or almost anything else in life, time is the one thing you can never get back. Once it's gone forever. When I was trapped in the availability cycle, it took a wake-up call from my doctor to see what was happening. But I'm curious about your experience with this. What's the biggest way constant availability has impacted your life? Has anyone else noticed that the moment you started protecting your time, things began to shift? Share your story in the comments, because what you've learned might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Now let's talk about what happens if you don't make this change. So, what's it gonna be? Are you gonna keep being available to everyone? Keep putting yourself last? Keep letting other people's emergencies become your priorities? Keep wondering why you're exhausted all the time? Or are you going to reclaim your time, your energy, your life? I'm going to give you a practical system for setting these boundaries in just a minute. But first, let's get real about what happens if you don't make this choice. The moment I realized I'd spent the majority of my adult life serving everyone else's agendas was the moment I understood why I felt so empty, so unfulfilled, so resentful. I was letting everyone else write the story of my life. Because if you don't set boundaries around your availability, the world will set them for you. Your boss will determine how you spend your evenings. Social media will determine how you spend your mornings. Other people's expectations will determine how you spend your weekends. Your phone will determine how you spend the small moments in between. Every notification is someone else deciding what deserves your attention right now. Every urgent request is someone else deciding what deserves your energy right now. Every interruption is someone else deciding what deserves your focus right now. And in 5 years, you'll either be the person who took back control, who became unavailable to distraction and available to purpose, or you'll be the person who's still wondering why they feel so depleted despite giving so much to everyone else. You'll either be the person who protected their dreams fiercely, or the person who helped everyone else achieve theirs while yours withered. You'll either be the person who values their time enough to guard it, or the person who lets others decide how your life unfolds, one interruption at a time. But how do I actually start becoming less available, you might be asking? Before I share the exact system that helped me break free, I want to be honest with you. This won't be easy at first. This transition isn't easy. When I first started setting boundaries, I felt physically ill from the guilt. I'd break out in a cold sweat when my phone rang and I didn't answer it. I'd lie awake worrying I'd disappointed someone, but I promise you, this feeling passes, and what replaces it is worth every uncomfortable moment. Start with small, daily acts of unavailability. Turn your phone off completely for the first hour after waking up. Batch process emails and messages twice a day instead of constantly checking. Create focus blocks on your calendar where you're completely unavailable. Set up an autoresponder that sets expectations about your response time. Delete social media apps from your phone for specific days. Practice saying, "I'll need to check my schedule and get back to you," instead of immediately saying yes. When you first start setting these boundaries, people will push back. They've grown accustomed to your constant availability. Some might get angry, others will try to make you feel guilty. A few might even try to manipulate you into returning to your old patterns. This is normal. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something right. People don't resist weak boundaries. They resist strong ones. Don't measure success by how many people you please today. Measure it by how aligned your time was with your priorities. Did you protect your creative hours? Did you say no to something that would have drained you? Did you create uninterrupted space for what truly matters? Consistency comes from systems, not willpower. Put your phone in another room when working. Use automated responses during focus hours. Tell people when you'll be available instead of always being available. And most importantly, don't apologize for taking control of your time. A no is a complete sentence. You don't need to explain, justify, or defend your unavailability. You simply need to practice it. Protecting your time and setting boundaries creates the foundation for something even more powerful. Once you've reclaimed control over your availability and learned to guard your energy, you unlock the ability to move faster than everyone else toward your goals. Most people are so scattered and reactive that they mistake motion for progress. But when you combine focused time with intentional speed, you can compress years of achievement into months. Here's how to accelerate your progress like never before. Step 1, get obsessed with your progress. The truth is that obsession is the entry fee for uncommon success. Most people dabble. They work on their goals when they feel motivated, when it's convenient, when everything else is handled first. That's why most people get mediocre results. You cannot be world-class at everything. You can't be the perfect friend, perfect partner, perfect entrepreneur, and perfect everything else simultaneously. You have to choose your season of focus and go all in. My friend, this is my invitation for you to embrace obsession. Immerse yourself completely. I think of it like standing under a waterfall. You want to be drinking from the fire hose, consuming everything you can about your chosen field until you're almost drowning in information. Surround yourself with other obsessed people. I joined mastermind groups and online communities where everyone is as focused on growth as I am. When your environment supports your obsession, it feels normal instead of extreme. Learn principles, not just tactics. Don't just copy what successful people do. Understand how they think. Study their decision-making processes, their frameworks for evaluating opportunities, their mental models for problem solving. Track everything relentlessly. I measure my progress daily. Revenue, content performance, client feedback, time allocation. If it matters to my goals, I track it and review it regularly. The word calling has all in at its center, and that's not a coincidence. Finding your purpose requires complete commitment to the path you choose. Step 2, simplify your business. The easiest thing in the world is making things complicated. Every person you talk to will have suggestions for how to improve what you're doing. The problem is that if you say yes to every good idea, you'll wake up one day buried under so much complexity that nothing gets done efficiently. I learned this lesson the hard way when my agency started growing. I said yes to every client request, every new service offering, every small addition to our process. Within 6 months, we had procedures for everything, quality was inconsistent, and my team was constantly confused about priorities. That's when I realized you cannot scale chaos. Success requires ruthless simplification. Here are my complexity killers. Simplify your goals. Most people have too many objectives. Pick one leading domino, the single goal that, if achieved, makes everything else easier or irrelevant. Simplify your decisions. I wear the same style of clothing every day. I eat similar meals. I work from the same coffee shop. Why? Because I don't want to waste mental energy on decisions I've already made. Simplify your workflows. If you do something more than once, create a system or automation for it. I never want to solve the same problem twice. Simplify your commitments. Design rhythms instead of making decisions repeatedly. My content creation happens every Tuesday and Thursday. My client calls are only on Mondays and Wednesdays. My calendar has a predictable structure that doesn't require constant decision-making, regular pruning. Just like a garden, your business will naturally become overgrown with complexity. Schedule monthly reviews to eliminate what's not working and streamline what is. So I'm going to reveal the exact mindset shift that helps you take action, even when you don't feel ready in just a moment. But first, you need to understand why most people get stuck in endless preparation mode. Step 3, default to action, not preparation. The biggest trap I see people fall into is preparing for action instead of taking action. They spend months researching, planning, and getting ready to start instead of actually starting. I used to be guilty of this too. I spent weeks designing the perfect logo, writing the perfect website copy, and creating the perfect business plan before ever reaching out to a single potential client. Meanwhile, my friend started his service business with a basic one-page website and was making money within his first week. There's a story about Elon Musk that perfectly illustrates this principle. When he bought Twitter, his team told him it would take 6 months to consolidate their data centers. Instead of accepting that timeline, he literally rented a U-Haul, flew to the data center, and started pulling out server racks himself. What his team said would take 6 months, he completed in 3 days. The lesson? Stop waiting for perfect conditions and start making progress with what you have right now. Here are 4 rules I follow to default to action. The by when rule. Never accept vague timelines. If someone says they'll get something done next week, ask by when exactly. If they say Friday, ask why not Tuesday. This forces specificity and creates urgency. The 2-minute rule. If something takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately. I see people spend more time adding tasks to their to-do list than it would take to just complete the task. The 70% rule. You don't need perfect information to make most decisions. As soon as I have 70% of the data I need, I make the call. You can always adjust course later, but you can't adjust course on something you never started. One-way versus two-way doors. Learn to distinguish between irreversible decisions, one-way doors, and reversible ones, two-way doors. Most decisions are two-way doors. Hiring someone, launching a product, trying a new marketing strategy. You can always reverse these if they don't work out. This whole action over perfection mindset changed the game for me, and I actually share more on that in my weekly newsletter. If you're not already on it, the link's below. Would love to have you there. Step 4, fire bullets, then cannons. Most people think the fastest way to success is going for the biggest win possible right away, but that's actually backwards thinking that leads to spectacular failures. If I showed up at your door right now with a $100,000 contract for whatever service you're offering, you'd probably panic. You're not ready for that level of opportunity yet, and trying to handle it would likely destroy your reputation and business. This is why I learned to fire bullets then cannons, a concept from Jim Collins's book, Great by Choice. The idea is to take small, low-cost shots to test your assumptions, learn what works, and calibrate your approach before putting serious resources behind it. Here's how to implement this. Create your riskiest assumptions list. Write down everything you're assuming about your business model, your audience, your pricing, your product. Rank them by risk level. Test the riskiest assumption first. If your biggest assumption is wrong, the others don't matter. Attack that one with the smallest possible experiment. Start with pre-sales. Before building anything significant, try to sell it first. This validates demand and funds development simultaneously. Scale what works. Once you have proof of concept and positive feedback, then you can invest bigger resources to amplify what's working. My friend, I'm curious about your experience with testing small before going big. Have you ever had a situation where you wanted to launch something major, but decided to test it small first? What did you learn that surprised you, and how did it change your approach? I'd love to hear your stories, because these experiments often reveal things we never expected. Step 5. Model, then modify. If you want to get on my bad side, ask me for advice, and then only follow half of it. I've learned that when someone gives you a proven blueprint, you execute it exactly as given first, then modify based on what you learn. This is how I shortened my learning curve from years to months. Instead of trying to figure everything out from scratch, I found people who were already successful and studied exactly what they were doing. When I decided to focus on content marketing for my agency, I didn't try to reinvent the wheel. I found 3 creators in my space who were consistently getting clients through their content, analyzed their strategies, and modeled their approach. I copied their content formats, their posting schedule, even their way of engaging with comments. The key is understanding the difference between copying the container and copying the content. You want to steal the structure, the principles, the underlying strategy, but adapt the specifics to fit your situation, your audience, and your personality. Here's my process. Identify successful models. Find 3 to 5 people who are achieving what you want to achieve through methods you respect. Study their systems. Don't just look at their results. Understand their processes, their daily habits, their decision-making frameworks. Execute first, modify later. Follow their blueprint exactly for at least 30 days before making any changes. This helps you understand why each piece works. Adapt to your context. Once you understand the principles, modify the tactics to fit your unique situation, audience, and goals. And if you're stuck finding mentors or examples to follow, just ask AI. ChatGPT has indexed virtually all human knowledge and will give you detailed blueprints for free. The information exists. The question is whether you'll act on it. My friend, I'm about to share a counterintuitive strategy that forces you to move faster by eliminating your safety net. But first, let me explain why most people never create enough pressure to succeed. Step 6. Burn the boats. Most people struggle with making decisions because they don't create enough pressure for themselves. They always leave themselves an out, a backup plan, a safety net that actually becomes their downfall. When I was still working my part-time job while trying to build my agency, I was comfortable being mediocre. I'd work on client projects when I felt like it, make excuses when things got hard, and always had the security of my paycheck to fall back on. Nothing really changed until I forced myself into a corner. I remember having a conversation with a mentor who asked me a simple question. If you knew that in 6 months you'd lose your job and couldn't get another one, how differently would you approach building your business? The answer was obvious. I'd work with 10 times more urgency and focus. That's when I realized I needed to burn the boats. The concept comes from ancient military strategy, where commanders would literally burn their ships after landing on enemy shores, leaving their troops with only 2 options: win or die. No retreat, no backup plan, just victory or nothing. Here are the 3 ways I've learned to create that same pressure. Force a deadline. Don't just say you want to hit a certain revenue goal someday. Pick a specific date and make it public. I told everyone I knew that I'd replace my job income within 4 months. The fear of public failure was more motivating than any vision board ever could be. Put money on the line. Even if you don't have much, create financial consequences for not following through. I made a bet with my roommate that if I didn't hit my income goal, I'd pay his rent for 2 months. Suddenly, every day mattered. Make external commitments. Tell people what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. The embarrassment of backing down will push you forward when motivation fails. Step 7. Go find bigger problems. If you want to compress years of progress into months, you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Success is like a video game. Every time you level up, you have to be okay with sucking at new challenges until you master them. Most people calibrate their lives based on the size of problems they're willing to handle. Small problems create small lives. Big problems create big lives. The question is, do you want oil change problems or jet fuel problems? When I first started my business, my biggest worry was whether a $500 client would pay on time. Now I'm dealing with hiring decisions, scaling systems, and strategic partnerships. The problems got bigger, but so did the opportunities and rewards. This is about understanding the concept of local maxima. You might be at the peak of your current mountain, but there are much bigger mountains out there. To reach them, you have to be willing to go back down into the valley and climb again. Here's how to actively seek bigger challenges. Reset your vision. Whatever your current goal is, add a 0 and ask yourself, why not me? If you're aiming for $10,000 months, why not $100,000 months? The only difference is the decisions you make and the problems you're willing to solve. Embrace the discomfort. When you feel overwhelmed by a new challenge, that's a sign you're growing. What got you here won't get you there, so expect to feel confused and uncertain as you tackle bigger problems. Be grateful for your problems. Each challenge is evidence that you're playing a bigger game. Instead of complaining about difficulties, thank them for pushing you to develop new capabilities. Study people solving bigger problems. Find mentors and examples who are operating at the level you want to reach. Understand not just what they're doing, but how they think about problems and opportunities. The speed advantage. The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They just refuse to accept the timeline that everyone else thinks is realistic. They burn boats, take action despite uncertainty, model proven systems, test quickly, simplify ruthlessly, embrace obsession, and tackle bigger challenges. Speed creates competitive advantage because while your competition is still planning, you're already executing, learning, and improving. While they're researching the perfect approach, you're discovering what actually works through real-world testing. But remember, this isn't about rushing through life without enjoying the journey. It's about being intentional with your time and energy so you can create the life you want faster, which gives you more time to enjoy it. The choice is yours. You can follow the conventional path that takes decades to build something meaningful, or you can implement these principles and compress that timeline dramatically. Most people won't do this because it requires short-term discomfort for long-term gain, but you're not most people, or you wouldn't have made it this far through this video. If you found this video helpful, this next video right here will take you even further. Your choice, your life, start now.